I'm Rochelle Wilhite. I'm the designated broker of Best Choice Realty. Welcome to our Monday night webinar. Tonight, we're going to be talking about earnest money non-refundable clauses and how we're going to move forward as a firm in how we structure the offers. So I'm glad you're able to make it because I think this will help a lot of you in putting an offer together that might have a better chance of getting accepted. I can't tell you it's going to win all the time, but I certainly can tell you it will make the listing agents a lot more happier. Not even a word. It's Monday. More happy. That sounds great. So we're going to go ahead and show you a few things, but just to kick it off, I want to just remind you, if you are dialing in for the first time, we do these calls every Monday night. Some of them are recorded and put in exclusive, so only Best Choice Realty agents can see them, and others we share with the general public so they can be well informed about some of the things. This is one of those calls where it's going to be exclusive to Best Choice Realty. So I want to give you guys the first look at what we're creating here. So I met with my attorney because I had kind of one of those situations where I was doing the panel last week with top listing brokers. Combined, all four of those brokers have conducted about 800 sales in last year. And one of the big takeaways that I took from that panel discussion was, are we doing a good job as buyer's agents in drafting paperwork that will actually make it easy on that listing agent to look at the compelling information contractually and advise whether they should accept our offer or not? And one of the key things that all four of these listing agents told me, and even after the fact, was that we need to do a better job of not making it complicated when it comes to earnest money non-refundable clauses. So I spent some time with my attorney, and it was funny, this morning she and I were laughing because she's been trying to work with a broker, not with one of us, but actually writing up one of her boyfriend's house. He's trying to buy another investment property, and they keep getting bid out. And she says it's most likely because of the addenda that's being flown around between the firms. So Windermere has their own addenda, John L. Scott has their own addenda, Keller Williams has their own addenda, everybody has their own addenda. And it's putting a lot of complexity for the seller in choosing the offers. And sometimes, although one offer may seem better than the other, it comes down to just a very simple thing. When is the earnest money going to be non-refundable to that seller? And the state of Washington's not wanting to put anything together. They're not looking to change the agreement anytime soon. So I told her, I said, can we put something together on a Form 34 that our buyer would sign, so it's not on a Best Choice Realty addendum, that we can include in our offers that will have a higher likelihood of the seller understanding what we're trying to accomplish. And we looked at several. So we looked at several on the screen this morning, and she went ahead and approved the one that I'm going to show you on the screen. So you guys are getting a first look at all of this. This will work for commercial and it will work for residential. It does not matter what you're working on, but the topic of the hour or the topic of the day is really earnest money non-refundable clauses. So I'm going to go ahead and just have Shannon show you what we have available now. So I don't want you to just go away from your business practice of advising and educating. I think that's number one, most important. We have that warning addendum. I'm going to have her put up on the screen because that does not change. In fact, our attorney loved that we do a lot of education and advising on all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and have her put that up on the screen. And while she's doing that, I want you to think about some of the instances you guys have experienced where you're on the one side or the other. You're the listing agent trying to review 20 offers, and you've got a Coldwell Banker addendum, and their addendum is like 7 pages, maybe 8. And then you've got the Skyline one, and you've got the Keller. It's super confusing. And if we can kind of keep the paperwork to a minimum, I think we're going to have more likelihood of the seller accepting our offer. So you do have to understand your contracts and knowing what the 22A and the 22EF and all of the forms that we use on a regular basis. You have to know your forms well. But in addition to that, if your client is wanting to, in essence, make their earnest money non-refundable, our attorney is okay with providing an addendum on a Form 34. So I'm going to show that in a minute. But before we do, Shannon, if you could share your screen. and show, okay, not that, don't show them that yet. That's the new one. Go ahead and show us the warning. And if we need to, we can show them where to go to get that. So that if you go to Best Choice Realty Homes, it's in the members, you go to downloads. If you don't have a login and password for this, I can say this on this call because I know it's not going to get posted on the World Wide Web. But if you need membership on our website, it's just Best Choice 2021. You can log in with a password. This is password protected. And there you have the buyer disclosure in a seller's market. Please continue to advise that there's reasons you would waive or not have contingencies. Please go over this with your buyer, because almost all of these instances, or this tactic that I'm going to share with you tonight, they're waiving a lot of things and they have a lot of rights, and you can get yourself into a lot of hot water if you're not actually advising or educating your client about what things they need to consider about inspection, about lease back, about financing, about these types of things that are very important to a buyer when they're making sometimes the most important choice in their life or the biggest investment in their life. It's important that they understand what they need to keep in mind when they're looking at doing a deal with you. So that is available for download. We even made it so it's easy for you to have them initial. That's a great thing that our attorney said continue to do. If you're showing that you had advised or educated, then if the buyer gets themselves an attorney, maybe under, once you're under contract or after you close, you can refer to this and say, you know what, I actually advised them about some of these things when we started talking about putting an offer in on the property located on XYZ Street. So this is a very valuable disclosure that I think you'll want to have in your tool bag before you even start working on the transaction. Now, if we go into the actual addendum, so most of you are using Transaction Desk, and we're actually going to do another sequence next week on a cover letter. That was another tip that I learned from some top listing agents, is that we need to clean up how we do cover letters and really showcase the strength that we have in our local community and honestly, the volume and the success that all of us share collectively because of all the real estate that we do at Best Choice Realty. We outshine our competitors in a very big way. And I think we can do that with a nice cover letter that currently our marketing director is working on as we speak. So more to come. We're going to place that cover letter so all of you guys can use it in Transaction Desk for the various types of transactions you're going to use. But today we're going to we're not going to start with the cover letter. We're actually going to go right to the issue at hand, which is the earnest money non-refundable. So we do have a Best Choice Realty addendum that currently has been used. I would say not very much as they should use. It's available for download here. And many of you, we've asked you guys to go ahead and use that. And this is where it becomes like, okay, we've got Best Choice Realty has their 2-page addendum. And then we've got Keller Williams with their 4-pager. And what I asked my attorney to do is, can we take the most important thing and can we place it on a Form 34 and make that the buyer and the seller that agree to incorporate that addendum into the contract, rather than floating around all of these addendum that we all agree on, but it makes more complexity and makes that seller have to read or review or just stressed out at the table in trying to determine which offer is the best offer. So the answer is yes. She says, I think it's a very smart idea. Let's go ahead and do it. And so what we decided to do is take the important number 3, earnest money to become non-refundable, and place that on the Form 34. So you don't have to use the Best Choice Realty addendum. This will be labeled in Transaction Desk after we get done with the call here. Give me a good hour to get it loaded with Shannon. But it's ready to go. And so you can basically have this already printed. You will just need to drag and drop where the earnest money, how much the earnest money is, and which box are you going to use. And it says the top paragraph is what she's approved. The buyers acknowledge they have been advised to consult with an attorney prior to making this offer and endorsing this addendum to the agreement. The buyer understands real estate licensees cannot provide legal advice and are not qualified to advise on or otherwise interpret the contents of this addendum. The buyers have been advised to seek independent legal, financial, and or professional counsel, or they have willingly decided to decline that opportunity without duress and reliance upon any representation of any party, including any real estate licensees. So that is the legal disclaimer, if you will, that we would put into this addendum. Then it just simply has the earnest money shall be released to the seller as follows. So this is instructing escrow to, okay, how much money are we talking about? Sometimes you guys want to only release 50,000. It's $100,000 earnest money. Whatever that may be, that is what goes into that line. So you need to pick a line. So it's either line 16, line 18, or line 20, 21, where you need to drag and drop the amount. And I think you guys are smart enough on Transaction Desk and AuthentiSign to be able to pull this off or pull this together. I hope so. We're going to practice it because you guys need to learn how to do that even in the cover letter that we're going to put together for you guys. If you're going to have it be a feasibility or an inspection contingency, it's very clear if you use that second line that it's going to apply once that period is completed, or escrow is going to release it once the financing or the appraisal contingency is waived or the removal. So the attorney liked that option better than the one that we have currently, where it leaves a lot of room for error or from misinterpreting some of the contract terms that are already in the commercial purchase and sale agreement or already in the residential purchase and sale agreement. Then the paragraph that you guys are all accustomed using and that most of the brokerages agree with is the term right here between line 22 and line 30, which says the buyers and sellers agree that the holder of the earnest money, and I almost have this thing memorized. I've used it so many times. And I would say, somebody asked me today, how many of our transactions is the earnest money released as a non-refundable deposit? I'd say 3 out of 4 sales right now that we currently review are earnest money non-refundable. So that's how frequently we're having to explain this to our clients, incorporate it using an addenda, try to make sense of it. I think it's a lot easier if we just have it here on the Form 34. So the buyers and sellers agree that the holder of the earnest money is hereby instructed to release the earnest money to the sellers without need of further authorization by the buyers. When due for release to the sellers, the earnest money converts to a non-refundable deposit and is applicable. This is the most important part. Applicable towards this purchase price and shall immediately become and be the property of the sellers and no longer considered earnest money. If the transaction fails to close for any reason other than termination by sellers, breach by sellers, or title to the property is uninsurable, the non-refundable deposit shall remain the property of the sellers. The provision does not require the holder of the earnest money to release any funds that have not become available from the buyer as liquid funds. So all of that language needs to be in the contract, and that is the type of language that most brokerages are using in their special addenda. Albeit we're not having all of this other stuff that we have to agree on as the parties. I'm hoping that this satisfies the listing agent's need for it to be on a Form 34, where the buyer and seller are basically contracting in this type of way. I would love to hear your comments and feedback on this, because I'm going to also create one for the septic, and it's like there's another one that's available as well. So sometimes when you have a septic or you have some sort of sewer problem or you have something complicated that you want to deal with, we actually have an addendum that was created for that as well. So instead of using the Best Choice Realty addendum, we have a Form 34 that will be labeled septic hold harmless or hold harmless. And that would be something you guys could use instead of using the 22S or the 22S King or the 22 Thurston. Many of you are wanting to be competitive and your clients are okay with the risk, but they have to understand that that is not typical not to have a septic addendum in the mix of the purchase and sale. And there is addendum for that as well. So I think that is the biggest thing that I've been asked for recently. And I believe that this answers many of your questions, but I do want to open up for discussion tonight because I know I maybe have not thought through everything, and I'd love to get your take on what we've created here. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open the call. If you don't want to unmute your line, you can chat in the chat box. But if there's no questions, I'm just going to walk through how you would do it on Transaction Desk, so you guys can see how it's done. So Shannon, if you want to gear that up, that would be great. But first, I want to just talk with Cheryl McLaren. Somebody who's been here a long time. Go ahead and unmute your line or send a chat. Mary Austin, she's a managing broker. Let's see who else. Candace, I'd like to know your thoughts on it.
I think it's, I honestly, well, let me see here. There we go. I think it's great because I just know that less is more. So as far as paperwork being concerned, and when you've got multiple offers on the table, you want your offer to show up as less and less being more. So having that just available on the Form 34 without all these other things that the listing agent may have to go through, I think will definitely help in being more competitive for sure.
Okay, fantastic. So we're going to go through real quick. Thank you for the feedback, Candace. Cheryl, if you want to speak up, just unmute.
Well, I was going to say, what I really like about it is that it's simple. I can even understand it. So that's a good sign. And because I think the first time I asked you for something, it was very similar to this, but I had to type it up myself.
Right.
And I haven't had to use it as much in Pierce County. Candace, have you had to use it a lot in Pierce County?
Not at all, but
I've only had to do it one time, and I've offered to do it a couple of times. So it's good to have this. At least we can feel secure with what we're offering. And I think that form that we have to give them in for a buyer and a seller's market is also good for discussion.
Right.
So that people feel secure with what they're doing.
Right. So that's not like we are just pushing him into something. I don't want to be a pushy, right? But
no, you're always on top of stuff, Rochelle. I appreciate you.
Thank you. So Shannon's mocking it up right now as we speak. So
can I chime in?
Sure, go ahead.
So the market I'm in, I think every market that we're in is extremely competitive, but I mean, I'm seeing a bunch of homes sell for more than 500,000 over asking. And so you really don't have a choice. I mean, if they want it, they're going to have to release the earnest money. So I just really appreciate, Rochelle, the way you're always out there, you know, always looking to see better ways for us to do it and to give the client the best possible chance. And I really appreciate you protecting us too.
Thank you, Mary.
Oh.
I've talked to people. I was shocked, honestly, when I was in the panel discussion and then talking to other designated brokers, and they're advising that, you know, instead of these addenda, we just agree on this earnest money non-refundable on a Form 34. And I was like, huh, we can do that. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with us doing that. So I appreciate you guys backing me on that idea. I think we can send a message if we consistently use this Form 34, then I can show with numbers how many deals we've used that. And then I hopefully can get the powers that be at the MLS and the Department of Licensing to see that we may need to do some forms change. I mean, they need to see numbers and they need to see less of everybody having their own addendum and the parties, actually the consumer, being okay with this type of language. I think that's what I'm hearing from the general public and from the designated brokers. Yeah. So Shannon's in the wizard right now. She's like on step 5, and you can see in the documents, there's the NWMLS 34 hold harmless for septic. And then there's the NWMLS 34. She's got it labeled non-refundable earnest money deposit. So it should be fairly easy for you to grab when you're bundling if you need to use the Form 34. The only word of caution that I would make sure that you guys use is that when you do the addenda line, remember when you do Form 21 or 28 or a CEBA, that you include the Form 34 as one of your addenda lines. Don't forget that if you're going to incorporate that in, that you're also describing the addenda that's included in the package on that pertinent line. And Shannon's quick, as you would guess. She's already got it bundled. So she would put all of the pieces together and there you have it. There's the NWLS non-refundable form. So she's incorporating that. Certainly you want to have the other forms, the 35W or the whatever forms you're using. Just don't forget to put on the addenda line that you have the Form 34 as one of the addenda. Okay, go to the non-refundable, Shannon, real quick, so we can see how we drag and drop that in. We're still getting used to this. I know, we're getting used to the new Authenticign. I don't know about you, but some days I have good days and some days I'm so used to the old. I've got to get myself using the new 100% of the time. We did do a recording on the new Authenticign. So if you are jumping on and you have not had a chance to review that, we did record it and it did come out clean. So yeah, just make sure you include Form 34 there on the addenda line and then scroll on down. And let's just practice dragging and dropping. There is a section right here on this here where we have to drag the stuff over. So there's a section right there which talks about markup. And we want to bring a text box over. There you go. There you go. And you double click it where it's going to be. While she's doing that, don't forget, if you are doing a non-refundable deposit, you cannot use a personal check on page 1. It has to be a wire or it has to be a cashier's check that escrow receives, because otherwise it doesn't clear the Federal Reserve. So you want to make sure you type it in. And so if you're using it on that section, then Shannon most likely has an inspection contingency. Maybe it's a 5-day inspection or a 5-day feasibility contingency. The buyer is okay with the $20,000 being released to the seller once that passes. We have had people, we've got some creativity over the years where they indicated, let's say, bring the $20,000 up to the first box. And let's say that we did agree to have a Form 35 and the seller agreed to sign off. That has happened. I had to bring this to my attorney's attention, and she just made sure that we actually had to negotiate that. And it's one of our top agents, and it was one of her purchases she was doing. And we had to actually get into a situation where we were mediating between who gets the earnest money. Obviously, we backed out on inspection. There was a 35R that we used to back out. But there was a section on Form 35 that says that the earnest money would be returned to the buyer. But that's a discrepancy when you use earnest money non-refundable clause. It's a conflicting clause. So just make sure that you understand when you put it on that top line, that's released to the seller. It's no longer considered earnest money throughout the entire document. If you end up putting it on the others, then your contingencies would be protecting you or your buyer, or the financing appraisal, and then the earnest money would become non-refundable, where they would not have to send over some sort of release or sign off on a 50 or a 51. The escrow company would be releasing that to the seller immediately once they see this document. So I hope that that's clear, but that's the reason why we have those 3 different sections, because I think it prompts the buyer to go, do I really want to have my earnest money go to the seller immediately, one day after mutual acceptance, or do I have to make sure that that money goes in, that other line or that second or third line? All right. And yeah, Shannon's just dragging and dropping as we speak. Any other questions about the earnest money non-refundable process? Because I find that we're having to have this conversation with every buyer. Mary's not lying. I know we had a conversation with Guy Cabianco. Guy had multiple offers on his listing, went up crazy amount of money. I think everybody used earnest money non-refundable clauses. Am I right, Guy, on his? I believe so.
Yeah, everybody released the earnest money on that deal.
And you had how many offers total? It was a listing.
11 offers.
11 offers. And it went up a lot, didn't it?
200,000 over list.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then
I'm going to go to sleep directly after this Zoom meeting. I'm done.
I think Guy and I, we were up late night talking, and but I think Guy didn't go to bed till like 1 a.m, trying to deal with all the offers coming in, negotiating. He's probably negotiating in his sleep, trying to get his clients the best deal, but he got a great deal on his seller. But all of these it was hard for Guy to go through. I'm looking at it, he's looking at it. We had addenda from all the different companies. Would this have helped, Guy, if it was just on a Form 34?
Absolutely, because I had to go back and forth with that other agent who didn't end up winning. But just to get the wording correctly, it took 3, 4, or 5 different attempts to get the wording correct.
Okay. And in that situation where you're the listing agent, I'm perfectly fine with you supplying them with an addendum like this and just saying the seller would like to have, all of the others that we're reviewing had an addendum like this. You're welcome to use the Form 34 addendum. If your buyer wants to sign it and include it in their offer, you can use it in that way as well.
That's a good idea.
Carl, I have a question. What if you're waiving both inspection and financing? Where do you put it? Well, if you're waiving both inspection and finance, you're going to put it right where Shannon's got it, right there at the top. $20,000 right there. At 1 day, if not filled in. So if you ended up putting let's say your earnest money is due in 2 days or 3 days, if your contract reads that way, then, you would fill in 2 days, you can make it the same. That is really pushing you on one day though, just so you guys know. One day, if you're going to wire, you got to have the wire account information before probably noon, because wire cutoffs are pretty early on in the afternoon. So if you don't have that, it's a lot more comfortable to be 2 days or 3 days. But in a multiple offer situation, I don't know about you, if I'm the seller, I'm looking for that money as quick as you can give it to me. And as soon as making sure that that's been released to me as quick as you possibly can get it. So one day is really the best situation that we have, but you've got to make sure that you have the wire or the wire instructions if you're representing the buyer, or you've contacted escrow so you can have that information ready to go first thing in the morning if you're the winning bid. Okay, any other questions? Shannon, do you have anything else? No. Candace?
This is great. I'm excited. I'm so glad it's in there and ready to use. Although I don't use it as much. I feel it coming, actually. I feel it coming.
If King County, everybody's using it. It's just and Pierce is becoming very fierce as well. And I know Snohomish County is very busy, even in condos, townhomes. Yeah. We're finding that there's multiple offers. So this
got beat out today as well. Wrote an offer for clients this weekend, didn't get it. So back to the drawing board.
Was it because of price or was it terms?
Price. Said our terms were better, but price. Yep.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, this would be one tactic, but it's not the only tactic. That's a good point. Absolutely. But if you have something that you can work with, sometimes that puts the seller at ease and the buyer at ease, knowing that we have this ready to go. Yeah. So hopefully that's helpful. All right. And then Shannon, just show on the screen the other one for the septics, the Best Choice Realty one, before we let everybody go, just to make sure that you guys have that available for you to use as well. So this one is just taking the language from our BCR addendum. Notice the paragraph is kind of the disclosure, if you will, of, that we're not attorneys, that they should have their own attorney review this, but basically this is hold harmless for building, substance, well, septic, or sewer. If you know that there might be some issues with septic, or the seller's not going to pump the septic, or they're not going to inspect it, Washington State states that the seller is supposed to provide a clear pumping report, inspection, and all of the like. But many people are just putting that home on the market, knowing that they're going to get multiple offers and letting that be the buyer's problem. Well, this is the hold harmless that you would use in those type of circumstances. So if you were using let's say normal addenda, but you don't want to use the 22S or 22S King or the Thurston County addendum or that, some sort of soil or something kind of, this would be what you would use, or a septic or a sewer system that may have some problems with it. This is where the buyer would assume that risk, and they're going to hold us harmless from taking any action. And it talks about at the very last line, all parties acknowledge the county may record a notice of non-compliance with the county auditor that the buyer is going to have to assume. So again, this would be worst case scenario. If you can't get your deals accepted and they're on septic, this might be the way to go about it, is just say, you know what, you guys pump the septic tank, you guys deal with the county, you guys record it with the county. Here's one way that we've won on some deals like that. Yes, there's risk, but that's why they have to have their attorney look this over if they're going to use it. All right. Any questions about that one, Candace? It's probably the most used that we see. Yeah, we use this one a lot, and we use the other earnest money non-refundable a lot. So we just made it easier. We're just using on a Form 34. Okay. Well, that's a wrap. 6 o'clock comes across fast. Next Monday, we're going to go over how to do the cover letter and some good tips on how to draft your cover letter. I've seen some really, really bad ones. So I think what I'm going to do, you guys can see some bloopers. They're not from Best Choice Realty agents, but we have some bloopers we've collected. And then we're going to show you some good tactics on how to write a good cover letter. And you're going to have a beautiful template that Lori's created that has kind of our talking of like what on the column, like what Best Choice Realty is all about. we want to really stand out in a very positive way to our competitors. So it's kind of setting the stage for negotiation right out the gate. And I just need you guys to be able to drag and drop on transaction desk so you can type. So if you need some more practice on how to do that, you might want to go back and practice on Authentisign. Those of you who have not used Authentisign and done a lot of dragging and dropping or typing, you might want to go practice that before you start using the cover letter, because that's how we're going to set it up, is using it through transaction desk to actually type into the form. Okay, so that's next Monday, and I'll look forward to talking with you then, if not sooner. Have a great week, everybody.